I turned 35 and threw myself a party. Nothing extravagant. Just a backyard setup with string lights, homemade food, a Spotify playlist I spent 2 hours curating. I even baked the cake myself. Chocolate with raspberry buttercream. My favorite. I sent invites 3 weeks in advance. Mom said she'd check her schedule. Ava, my sister, left it on read. Dad didn't reply at all, but I figured they'd show. I was always the one who remembered their birthdays, who sent flowers, who booked restaurants and wrote heartfelt cards. Surely they'd come. By 7 p.m., the candles on the table had melted to stumps. By 8 o'clock, the guacamole had turned gray. By 9 o'clock, I turned off the music and packed everything into Tupperware. No one came. Not one text. Not one excuse. Not one single call to say, I'm sorry. 5 days later, I got a group text from my mom. We're organizing Dad's 60th. A week in the Keys. $2,800 per person. Venmo me. No hello. No happy birthday I missed. No acknowledgement that they had ignored me entirely. Just a bill. I stared at the message for a long time, the words blurry from the rage tightening in my chest. And then I did the only thing that felt right. I sent her $2 with a note, congratulations. Then I went to the door, changed the locks, and blocked every number in my phone tied to blood. 3 days later, Ava tried to access the joint emergency fund, the one I had contributed to month after month. Well, they called me selfish and said I never really pitched in. Blocked. And just when I thought they'd finally leave me alone, the police showed up at my door. Ma'am, we received a report that you've been missing. Family said they're concerned for your safety. My name is Delilah Quinn, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because when the people who never show up for you start screaming when you disappear, it's not because they care. It's because you took the oxygen they were quietly stealing and learned to breathe without them. When I was 8, my sister Ava got a brand new bike for her birthday. Pink, with a sparkly seat and white tassels on the handlebars. She didn't even ask for it. Just woke up to it on the porch, shiny and perfect. That same year, I got a second-hand set of colored pencils for mine. Half of them already used, most of them broken. Mom smiled when I opened them. You're the creative one, she said. Ava's more into sports. And that was the beginning. Ava was celebrated. I was functional. She got praise, attention, extra dessert. I got told I was so mature for my age, which in our house was just code for we expect you to understand things that hurt. By high school, Ava was skipping classes and hosting sleepovers that left the kitchen trashed. I was holding straight as and washing dishes without being asked. When she crashed Dad's car, they blamed the rain. When I missed curfew by 10 minutes because of a late bus, I was grounded for a week. Still, I kept showing up. Every holiday, every family dinner, every birthday, armed with gifts and patience and just enough hope that maybe this time they'd treat me like I mattered. Instead, I got used to hearing the same phrases on loop. Don't take it personally. She's just going through a phase. You'll understand someday. But someday never came. At 28, I loaned Ava $5,000 to get her through a rough patch. I never saw it again. At 31, I took care of Mom after her surgery. Changed bandages, cleaned the house, handled insurance paperwork. Ava came by once, for 20 minutes, left with a selfie and a story to tell her friends about how emotionally draining caregiving is. Still, they thanked her first in the group text. And me? You've always been the reliable one. Like that was love. When I planned my 35th birthday party, I knew better than to expect anything extravagant. But I thought maybe they'd show up. Turns out, I was still waiting to be seen by people who had made an art out of pretending I wasn't standing right in front of them. That night, after no one came, I sat on my porch staring at the flickering candles, and the only thing I could think was, how many more years will I waste hoping this time is different? I didn't know it yet, but I had already asked my last question of them. The next one would come in the form of silence, and that would be my first real answer. The day after I sent my mom $2 with the message, congratulations, I sat on my living room floor and opened every single drawer they'd ever had a key to, metaphorically and literally. The front door? Lock changed. The spare key I'd hidden under the flower pot for emergencies? Tossed. The shared streaming account that they used but never contributed to? Cancelled. The family group chat that only pinged me when someone needed help moving, borrowing money, or crying about their drama. I left it without a word. I went down the list and blocked every single number tied to my bloodline. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. It wasn't about deleting people. It was about removing access to me. My peace, my time, my energy. Things they had taken freely without ever asking if I had enough for myself. That day, I opened my freezer and stared at the leftover birthday cake I had wrapped in foil. Still untouched. I took a bite. Cold. Sweet. Dense with sugar and a quiet kind of grief. Then I threw it in the trash. There was no ceremony. No sad music playing in the background. Just the sound of a plastic lid closing. Final. After that, I logged into the joint emergency savings account. The one they'd all agreed was for family stuff, but which in reality meant I deposited $250 every month while Ava pulled money out for spontaneous spa trips and Dad used it to pay for his fantasy football bets. I had funded 90% of it. I froze it. I didn't drain it. I didn't steal. I just made it so no one could touch it, not without me present. 3 days later, Ava tried to withdraw $800. Declined. That was when the text started. First from her. Hey, I think something's wrong with the bank. Then from Mom. Did you change something with the joint account? Then again from Ava, this time more direct. Why are you being petty? It's not that deep. I stared at that last message for a long time. Not that deep? They hadn't shown up to my birthday. Hadn't texted, called, or acknowledged me. Had sent me a bill instead of sorry. But I was the petty one. I didn't reply. That was the day I turned my phone off for good. I told my clients they could reach me by email only. I logged out of social media. Deleted my photos from our shared iCloud folder. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Because the truth was I hadn't disappeared. I just finally stopped giving them a front row seat to the life they never clapped for. And that silence, it wasn't passive. It was power. Ava tried calling 6 times in one day. I didn't answer. She left one voicemail, her voice sweet and fake and just tight enough to let me know she was angry, but trying to sound concerned. Hey, Del, just checking in. Not sure what's going on with the joint account, but I'm assuming it's a glitch. Let's talk soon, okay? I didn't call back. I didn't explain. Because here's what they never understood. I was never asking for attention. I was asking for respect. And when you stop giving people your labor, your money, your energy, your emotional first aid kit, they don't grieve the relationship. They grieve the loss of your usefulness. I saw it play out like a movie. First confusion, then concern, then irritation, then full-blown meltdown. By the end of the week, my mom had emailed me. We're family. We don't freeze each other out like this. I almost laughed. They didn't freeze me out? They skipped my 35th birthday like it was nothing. Sent me a bill 5 days later. Didn't send one message to ask if I was okay. But now that the ATM was offline, now we're family? I left the email unanswered. And that's when they did the most dramatic thing of all. They filed a missing person report. It's almost impressive, in a way, the leap they made from you're dramatic to you've disappeared. 3 days after I blocked everyone, 2 uniformed officers showed up at my door. I opened it in pajamas, holding a cup of tea. Ms. Quinn, we received a report from your family that you might be missing. They said you've been unreachable, and they're worried. I blinked. I'm not missing, I said. I just stopped answering people who hurt me. They looked at each other, like they weren't sure what to do with that. I invited them in. Showed them the birthday photos, candles lit, food untouched. Showed them the text asking for $2,800. The blocked calls. The Venmo message. The receipts. One of the officers actually sighed. Honestly, seems like they just didn't like you going no contact. I nodded. They apologized for the inconvenience and left. And that night, I posted a photo of myself, hair wrapped in a towel, book in my lap, mug in hand. Caption, not missing, just unavailable. No names, no drama, no hashtags, but I know they saw it Because silence may be invisible, but its weight? It's unforgettable. After the police left, I sat in complete silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the kind that makes your skin itch with loneliness. This silence felt earned. Like peace that had been waiting its turn for years. The officers had left with their little notepad and polite nods. They hadn't treated me like a threat. Just another adult who decided to set boundaries, which, imagine that, is not a crime. Still, I couldn't shake the absurdity. They reported me missing. No calls on my birthday. No knock on my door the day after. But the second I stopped being useful, I was suddenly lost. It wasn't concern. It was control dressed up in panic. The only thing missing was their ability to reach me. And that I was not returning. That same night, Ava posted on her Instagram story, not directly about me, but I know shade when I see it. Some people disappear and think it makes them mysterious, but mostly it makes them selfish. A beach selfie followed. Caption, #family first. Funny how the people who preach family first are always the ones who think that means you come last. I didn't reply, didn't screenshot, didn't even care, because I had my own version of reality, and for the first time, I wasn't editing it for someone else's comfort. Instead, I went to therapy. I started with 1 session a week, then 2. I unpacked things I hadn't said aloud in years. How I always felt like a guest in my own family, how being good meant being quiet, how Ava could ruin a birthday and still be the one they bought a gift for. My therapist looked at me after one particularly hard session and said, "You weren't difficult. You were just honest in a family that preferred denial." That sentence stayed with me. I started writing it on sticky notes and putting them on my fridge, my mirror, my laptop. It became my anthem. I wasn't missing. I was done. Done begging for crumbs. Done interpreting silence as something I had to fix. Done playing the reliable daughter while they took until I disappeared into the background. And here's the best part. The more they panicked, the calmer I became. Because I realized the only thing they missed was the version of me they could guilt into staying. Now that she was gone, they had nothing left to manipulate. Just their own echo. Without me, they started slipping. Quietly, then all at once. I didn't see it firsthand, of course. I wasn't there. But word got around. People talk, especially when the person they used to lean on suddenly goes silent. It started with Ava. She tried to book the $2,800 birthday trip without consulting anyone. My mother assumed I'd be contributing as always. When I didn't, they were short. Hotels got downgraded. The surprise yacht dinner became a lakeside rental with boxed wine and plastic cutlery. The cracks were subtle at first. Small jabs, muttered complaints. But I wasn't there to mediate. And that's when the blaming started. Ava accused Mom of managing everything poorly. Mom snapped back, said Ava was just like her father. Dad, the quiet coward he always was, walked out halfway through dinner and didn't return till midnight. I heard all this from a distant cousin who called me out of nowhere. "Delilah, are you okay? It's a mess over here without you." That one sentence did something I didn't expect. It didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel seen. Because all those years I was called dramatic, selfish, overreactive. The truth was, I'd been holding the whole damn house together with quiet sacrifices. And now that I'd stopped, the weight fell exactly where it belonged. They tried to act like I was invisible, replaceable, but when the glue disappears, things don't bend. They break. Meanwhile, I started breathing again. Real breathing. Deep in the lungs, into the belly, no tightness in my chest kind of breathing. I went to therapy twice a week. Started writing again. Took long walks at sunset. Phone on Do Not Disturb, not because I was avoiding anyone, but because no one left was worth answering. I launched a small design business from my guest room. Named it after a phrase my grandmother used to say, "Build soft, live loud." Clients started pouring in. Reviews were kind. Payments came on time. And best of all, no one in my inbox was asking me to fix a family mess I didn't make. I laughed more. I slept deeper. I remembered what my actual laugh sounded like, not the one I used to soften the room, the one I weaponized to keep peace. This one was real. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation for my joy. I wasn't missing from their world. They had just never imagined a version of me where I stopped asking for scraps and started building banquets. I was still here, still alive, still thriving, just no longer available to hold up a collapsing house I didn't set on fire. It was a Wednesday night when I wrote the letter. No dramatic music playing. No thunderstorm in the background. Just me, barefoot in sweatpants, glass of wine on the table, and an ache in my chest I hadn't fully named yet. I didn't plan to write it. It just came out like a purge, like something waiting behind my ribs for too long. The first line was simple. This is everything I never said out loud. Then came the flood. I wrote about the birthday party no one showed up for, about sitting at that table alone while the candles burned down and the cake went untouched, about waiting, still waiting for someone to text, "I'm sorry." I wrote about Ava, how I used to envy her, not for the attention, but for how easily love was given to her, how she never had to ask for softness, how even when she hurt people, someone swept in to protect her. Meanwhile, I was the one sweeping. I wrote about my mom, how her silence always cut louder than words, how her coldness trained me to think that withholding affection was normal, that love had to be earned by being useful. I wrote about my dad, how he watched all of it and said nothing, and how silence from a father feels like being erased in slow motion. And then I wrote about myself, the version of me they thought they knew, the strong one, the quiet one, the one who never needed anything, the one who handled it. And how all that strength they praised, it was survival, not choice. I told them I forgave them, but not for them, for me. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't letting someone off the hook. It's realizing you don't have to carry the weight anymore. When I finished, the letter was 5 pages long, my handwriting a little shaky, the ink smudged in a few places. I folded it, didn't read it back, didn't proofread, didn't pause to decide if it made sense. Then I walked outside to backyard, lit a small fire in the pit, and dropped the pages in one by one. They curled at the corners, blackened, disappeared into ash. I watched every word burn. And the strange thing? I didn't cry. Not once. I just felt lighter. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't closure in the dramatic, shouted in their face kind of way. It was release. The kind of peace that only comes when you stop trying to get people to understand you, and instead, understand yourself. I finished my wine in silence, went back inside, brushed my teeth, slept with no dreams. That letter? They never got it, and they never needed to, because it wasn't for them. It was for the girl inside me who sat through 100 dinners where no one looked her in the eye. The girl who spent years wondering, what did I do wrong? The girl who finally knew. She wasn't broken. She was just surrounded by people who benefited from her silence, until she stopped being quiet. The morning of my 36th birthday, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and coffee. Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains, warm and gold. In the kitchen, laughter bounced off the walls. My best friend, Mariah, was humming some old Whitney Houston track while making French toast. There were tulips in a vase I didn't remember placing there. It was soft, quiet, real, and it was mine, not a grand hotel, not a $2,800 island trip with fake smiles and matching polo shirts. Just joy that didn't need a price tag. At the table were people who showed up, not for optics, not for obligation, but because they loved me in the steady, sacred way I used to beg for from my family. Mariah, my coworker Jenna, and her wife. Isaac, my neighbor, who brought a bottle of wine and a loaf of banana bread with happy birthday carved into the top in chocolate chips. We ate, passed plates, made dumb jokes, and nobody checked their phone mid-conversation. At one point, someone said, "Delilah, you've got the calmest energy I've ever felt." And I smiled, because calm didn't used to be my story. I used to be tension wrapped in skin. The fixer, the good daughter, the second option. I used to wake up every birthday, wondering if they'd remember. If maybe this year, the cake wouldn't feel like an apology for something I didn't do. Now, I didn't wonder anymore, because I wasn't waiting for anyone to see me. I saw myself. After brunch, I curled up by the window with my journal. Not to vent, not to explain, just to remember. I wrote one sentence at the top of the page. They thought I disappeared, But really, I just stopped showing up for people who never showed up for me. That wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even sadness. It was truth. And truth is heavier than grief. But it holds you more honestly. They had told the world I was missing, painted me as unwell, unstable, distant. But I wasn't missing. I was unavailable to manipulation, to guilt, to being used up like a spare battery in the junk drawer. What they missed wasn't me. It was the version of me that absorbed their chaos, paid the bills they forgot, showed up to parties I wasn't invited to, and clapped for people who never clapped back. They missed their free labor. They missed their scapegoat. They missed the glue. But me? I didn't miss them. Because what I've learned is that peace isn't something you earn by being small enough to fit into other people's comfort zones. Peace is something you claim and protect and build walls around when necessary. That night, I lit one candle for myself. No cake, no singing, just me on my balcony under the stars, wrapped in a blanket of my own making. And as I watched the flame flicker, I whispered to no one, "Happy birthday, Delilah. You made it. Not just to 36, but to the other side,